Hi, I'm Chris Magias, creator of Flux Destiny. Welcome to the Flux Destiny channel here on YouTube. I'm here with Ella Powell, our head of the community and our head of RPG. How are you, Ella?
I am good. You know, here we are once again, and I love doing these videos with you. I don't know if I ever say that, but I honestly, every time we get in these videos, I just get all like smiley and giggly, and I don't know why, I just love doing it. It's so fun.
Yeah, I've started it was so funny because when we first started working together, I was like, uh, do you want to do videos with me? And I didn't know if you were going to end up doing it. And then we just have this natural chemistry and how we work together. So it's the same for me. You make these a lot of fun, so I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Chris. I'm so excited to be kind of nearing the end of the series that we've been doing, which is Journey to Flux Destiny, which is sort of the how Flux Destiny came to be and how it was first thought of, and then how it changed. And it's been a long journey. It's not something that it has just been created over the last year, but it's something that's been this very long, stretch of time in which it went from drawing to comic to book to audiobook, and then here we are. And so many things have changed. But today we're talking about sort of the last step before it became what it is, which is Battlegate and Fortuna's Rings, which are sort of the two most, I think, popular versions of what Flux Destiny has been. And yet those aren't in canon anymore. They're gone, right?
That's right. And it's funny because when when we explored this in our previous videos, I talked about how I had this idea and I was experimenting using webcomics, which at the time when I first launched Battlegate, webcomics were very popular. It was popular in a different way because people were not used to the kind of updates that we have today, where it's like you have updates of content all the time. So you were lucky to get a page from a creator like a week, right? Like a lot of times people would post a page a month and it was like, but people loved it. They loved their favorite webcomic creators. And so for me as that was some time ago. That was 2005. I was 25 then, and I was starting to do this. And for being a young creator who was just right out of college and trying to experiment with his own universe and develop his own universe, webcomics were a great way for me to do that, right? And so I had my own style and my own unique premise for it. But I think between Battlegate and the pilot book, which is Fortuna's Rings, it was a development process that was happening in the public's eye, right? It was like each time, each one of those was a development process to create the world, to get feedback too from people who were like, do you even like these characters? Do you like this premise? Was a big deal. And lots of things came into that from all that. Not only was it the feedback I was getting, but the acceptance of it, people really liking it, and being able to build a social media platform off the art and premise and those things alone was really important.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit more about Battlegate. We'll start with Battlegate, and then we'll talk a little bit about Fortuna's Rings. Battlegate, from what I remember from it, it was just so different. Like, it was almost a different genre. I mean, like, Hugo and Marco were in it, but they were very different. Can you tell us a little bit, like, kind of about the plot and about Hugo and Marco, and how that was sort of different than what we're seeing today?
It was remarkably different. Like, it's not even, you might as well just change the name of the characters and like call it something else at this point, because it was my first attempt at trying to find a world and a story for them. And because I had talked about in the previous video how I come up with these characters. And in Battlegate, it starts off immediately with this story, with this panel where you see Hugo is apologizing for something he did, and we don't know what he did. But it then opens to this like prison facility where where Marco is a young like officer there, right? And he's probably, I think I had him at like 18, 19, something. So he was very new, but he's much older than he is now in the main series. And he's at least 5 years older than he was. And he ends up getting paired with Hugo as Hugo Marco thinks he's getting a promotion because he's been kind of skyrocketing up the ranks at such a young age, but instead he gets paired with Hugo, who's been in this facility, and he's been given probation, right? So Hugo's like a kid on probation. Hugo's even younger. I think he's like 13 or something in this. So there's a much bigger age gap between them. You're like, what could this kid have done to be on probation? Like, why would he be in this like really difficult, prison camp and all this stuff? The world was also very different too, because it was kind of this fantasy world, a la like it would have the vibes of kind of like old school Legend of Zelda kind of fantasy world, where you have monsters and you have it's kind of quasi medieval, it's just a whole different, it's so different. Like I don't even, when people bring it up, I don't even recognize, like it's hard. I'm actually, I don't want this to be misinterpreted. I don't want to talk about it anymore after a certain point, because it's like
yeah,
in relation to Flux Destiny, right? Because I feel like yes, that was what it was. That was like an attempt, a draft, a sketch, right, of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, the old school fans who started with me a long time ago remember that's how they met this, and they've been through the whole process of growth of the characters and the change and everything. That like, and I'm very proud of what I did with that, because let me just say that, like I mentioned in the last video, that I worked incredibly hard on that. I think it ended up being like 150 pages, graphic novel, hand drawn. The whole thing was hand drawn. Like, and when I say hand drawn, on paper, okay, like I still have. One day I'm gonna like, I still have all the paper. It takes like this big of a stack. I'm gonna have to like auction that off or give it away as a like a gift to somebody. But it has all the art on it, and it was a tremendous amount of work, and I'm very proud of it, because the slow pace of it, in that it's a lot of work. People really take for granted how much work it takes to create a graphic novel or a webcomic or whatever. It's a lot of work, especially full color, right? As a single person, because usually full studios have like, you'll have assistants and colorists and all this. No, I was doing everything. That slow pace let me think. You know what I'm saying? Like I really had lots of time to think. And as I was going through it, I wasn't ready yet. I didn't know where it was going, and I admitted this in my other video. I didn't know where it was going. I was making the plot as I go, as I went. But it made me realize I need to stop and plan this. And it so happened that at the end of that particular, there was an arc that ended there on page 150 or whatever. I had started working for Funimation as their head of original anime, and that was a very consuming job, and so I didn't have time to work on it like I used to. So anyway, sorry for the info dump, but you're making me
no, it's perfect. I mean, it's the answer to the question that I asked. So before we officially leave Battlegate behind, is there anything from it that came over? I mean, besides like the names of the characters, right? A couple of them. Is there anything that came over or stuck with you through this whole thing?
No, like there's
literally nothing.
There was nothing. That's why I don't want it to be misunderstood. Like when I say I want to leave Battlegate behind, it has nothing to do. The only thing that possibly could be kind of element, not only their names, but Hugo was like a, what do you call it? Like a pickpocket in this story too. He was very, what is it when someone steals? I forget the word. It's
he was a kleptomaniac.
He was a kleptomaniac. He was a kleptomaniac in this, and he would steal. And there's a scene where Marco is like shaking him, and like all this stuff falls out of him, and he's been stealing. That's not Hugo. This is a completely different person. This isn't Hugo. Mm-hmm. They only share names, and that Marco only is a completely different person too. So the only thing that carried over was that, but not even their personalities. And Hugo was also more a stereotypical like teenage boy, like one that you just,
he was younger. Yeah,
he was younger, and he was like, I don't remember I don't know the word to pick for it, but he was just, but it was all supposed to be an act because he was pretending to be that way. And then you would discover later that that's not who he was. And there was all this like, all this like disguise, like even his name was supposed to be a disguise. All this stuff was just a mystery that I had come up with. So yeah, there is outside of that, there is nothing. But as a standalone piece, I do love when we give it to our patrons who get to go look at it, because it is part of it is part of the life cycle of this universe. It started as that, just like, things evolve in our universe. It evolved from this initial draft that I created. So I'm not I feel like by seeing that, you can see such a huge growth in not only my art at the time, because I was just starting, right? So my art then, as charming as it was nothing compared to what I do now. It was pretty elementary, and my writing and everything else. So
okay, so that's the official closed door on Battlegate. You
right?
Heard it here first. You can't get it anywhere. It's for patrons only, and it's like, even then, it's well hidden. So that's the end to that chapter. But let's talk a little bit about Fortuna's Rings, who's also sort of we're closing a door on a little bit, and it's a bittersweet, because Fortuna's Rings was sort of the launching point between sort of like we're doing now, in which there's a new canon. Fortuna's Rings did the same thing, in which it sort of launched a new canon, and it's closer to what is now official. Tell us a little bit about the relaunch process and how you ended up writing that book, and because it went from being a webcomic to a book and a full sort of world. So tell us a little bit about it, and then also tell us maybe a little bit why you decided to close that chapter as well.
So first, let me say, before I even say all of that, there is not going to be another. This is the canon. Like, where we are now is the canon, right? Everything else that led up before this was the development to what this would be now. So let me make that clear. Yep. Okay, let me just make that clear first. When I did that, when I had just left Funimation, I had been there many years and gone back out on my own to produce some other movies and projects, and Flux Destiny came back into my mind. And actually, it was during that time that I came up, during the Funimation time, that I had come up with the title Flux Destiny. And I decided, I had so much experience making movies and producing them and working with scripts, but writing a book is a very different thing. It's a very different animal than writing it. And I said, when it was time to explore that universe again, to like, okay, now I want to go do this, I had a couple of options. I'm like, am I going to go back into webcomics? Well, webcomics were incredibly time intensive, as I told you before. Not only was it time intensive to create them, but putting it out there was too slow. It was just too slow for me to do. I'm not a fast artist. To get where I wanted to go with it, it was just too slow. So I made the decision that I looked at other properties, and you look at other things like, any other like major like young adult novels. I said, you know what? I can crank out way more words faster than I can drawing this stuff. And having come from the experience of being a studio executive and producing movies and things like that, and also optioning people's books to create movies and things, I said, you know what? This is the fastest, cheapest, most creative way I can do this. Because I said, if I can create the books, they also become way more, they're super canon because they're in words. And I can also leave some of the imagination to the fans. Which, side note, just quick side note, I think that's why people who watch movies about their favorite books a lot of times get disappointed, is that there's so much of it left to their imagination. It's not matching what their imagination is, right? And so everyone's expectation of what the book is going to be is very different. So just
Yeah.
this little side note. But I
So
decided to
if we
go.
ever animate Flux Destiny, you will be disappointed.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the end.
just because. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. You heard it here. So I did the book. It actually was super fast. It took me 6 months to write the whole thing. It was it was one of the most fun experiences and challenging experiences I had done, was writing that first book. But I was very proud of it because it was a nice blend of like the humor and the drama and the action that I wanted. And when I had released it, the feedback I had gotten was really encouraging. I mean, we also did the audiobook version of it, which was performed amazingly by Todd Haberkorn. We hit the top 150 of Audible originals. We did. We have now, I think it's still holding at like a 4.8, 4.7 star rating on Amazon. I got a lot of great compliments on the way I wrote the teenage characters and the way that I described the universe around them. So for me, it was like, okay, this is my mark of passage, right? I was like, I'm going to do this, and now I can say I'm an author, and I can go to the next level of. I went from being a producer to an author, and now I can take this more seriously. The last thing I want to add to all that is that the reason that I had decided to cut off these previous iterations was, it's cleaner to do that than to try to shoehorn everything together and make it work, right? It's like, I'm going to acknowledge that this is a development, a pilot. This is what it is. And I'm going to take the great things from it that I liked. And then I'm going to cut it off. And instead of trying to make things work and shoehorn them to retcon, because you know what I feel about retcons. Like, I talk about this all the time. I hate retcon. And I would have to retcon a lot of things to make this all work. And so I said, I'm going to take this as another successful proof that there's legs here, and I'm going to give it the time it needs. And I gave it a lot of time, because that book was in 2017, and I think the audio book released a year later. And then I spent the next several years developing it, like 5 years or so, writing and developing all the lore. And Ella can tell you, because she's seen all the back end of all this. She's seen everything.
Yeah.
She knows everything. Like, she knows how the whole series ends and everything. So, and she knows all the deep backstory. And she can tell you there's an incredible amount of development that was done, because I wanted it to be, okay, this is the one. We've thought it out. All the lore, the magic system, the universe, everything has been developed. And so, as frustrating as it was to not create new content during that time, it was, I feel like it was one of my best decisions was to step back and take that and create the canon universe and canon lore, because I'm incredibly proud of it, even at this stage.
Yeah, I think that from somebody who has seen all the work that has been put in, I can say, as a fan and as somebody who's working with it and to build it, that it's much more thought out. As much as I'm sure a lot of people love Fortuna's Rings and how wonderful it was, I promise that this one's better. Like, and it will be, and it's so fun, and it's there's so much world there that you can actually sort of dig into. I don't think that the RPG would have been possible with Fortuna's Rings. It just wasn't big enough. There wasn't enough world to stand on. And now we've got a universe in which people can actually join, not just enjoy like from the outside, but can actually feel like they're a part of, which I know is a silly goal, but it's something that I think is really important. And there's just so much more inside of it. And we want to do it for a long time. We want to have a lot of stuff in there. And so it needed to be expanded. So, well, thank you, Chris, for telling us about it. Is there any sort of last things that you want to say? I know that in our next video, we're going to be talking with the lore leaders about stuff that's sort of come over from the previous world, and some stuff that's canon versus not canon anymore, some rules and like mechanics of the world. But is there anything else like broadly that you want to say that has come over?
Fortuna's Rings, because there are several things that came over from it that still exist. Like, that's the first time I named the country Fortuna. The nature of Fortuna is very different than it was in that world. The fact that Marco and Hugo's beef that they have with each other is more accurate, and that was brought over. The idea of clockbots that were introduced in that story was brought over. So all those things were brought over from it. And I just want to add to something you were saying earlier about, like, there wasn't enough to create an RPG on. That's such an important point, because I had really studied so many different shows, and I'm not going to name them because I don't want to dig on people's shows, but there are certain shows, and I think we all know what they are, that they're popular, right? They're really popular shows, but it's usually hanging by a thread. And what I mean by that, it's usually one conceit. It's like one little thing that if you took that one thing away, the whole world falls apart. Right? I don't want to bring up examples right now, because I just don't want to, like, get into fights with other fandoms. But I can tell you that if you were to take this one little thing away, sometimes it's a dynamic between two characters, right? And that's the show. And if that resolves, there's no show, there's no story, right?
Right.
And that's what I felt was happening with my previous iterations, was that it was all about Marco and Hugo's friendship, and that was it, and everything else was too light around it. There was no world. And one of my objectives with Flux Destiny was to build a universe that was expandable, because it's a lot of not every story has to have an extended universe, right? That's not necessary. My intent with Flux Destiny was to do that. I wanted to create an expandable universe that people could have an RPG, and people could have their OCs, and we could tell lots of different stories. To do that, you have to build a very different world than you would for something that's a standalone story. Because in a standalone story, the world exists to serve the plot, and when you try to extend it beyond that, the foundation is too weak. It doesn't have enough material to hold up a world, right? And so you have to, like, continue to extend it. That's what took me. You have to think of it like, how long it takes to build highways and stuff. That's kind of like what it took the last 5 years, was developing all of that groundwork, that foundation, so that we could easily create this, not only so it could hold the weight of the 7 books that are the narrative of the 7 books that are that's being written right now, but all the other stuff we wanted to do, the RPG, the other spin-off stories, the other graphic novels, just all these other things that will happen within this universe. And that took investment. If I wanted it to be thoughtful, if I wanted to be able to say, this wasn't stuff I was just pulling out of a hat and making up, then it meant I had to put the investment of time in. And as frustrating as it was, it's made for a world that, and I know I'm the creator, so I'm, of course, naturally proud of it, but it's made for a world that I can confidently speak from as a place that's so developed that I think fans are going to be really surprised with this next book that's coming out and with all this other material, because of the depth of what's been developed. I mean, they're already seeing it with the RPG. I mean, Ella can tell you, they can already see it from there.
Yeah, I think something that you said that's really important that I just kind of want to expand on is that it's not just us that are proud, but we've actually found that there are lots of people that are really proud of this world who have joined it and want to support it sort of from the inside, which is something that I personally wasn't expecting when I joined. I thought, oh, people are fans of it, but there are people who are in it who are lore leaders and stuff, like on Discord. And if you come and join it, you'll see that there are people sort of supporting it from the inside of the fandom, where they want to be proud of it because they enjoy asking questions. They want stuff to make sense. They're not looking to trick us or to try to break stuff down or fight with each other. That everybody's really proud of it. They're proud of how our community has grown. They cheer for us every time we get subscribers. They cheer for us every time somebody new joins the fandom, because they know and enjoy the world building so much that they like to be a part of it. They like to see it grow. And now that it's sort of at its tipping point to be ready to go, they're even more proud of it. And so it's something that we really enjoy within our fandom.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, and I'll just add one last thing to it. And I think I've mentioned this in my previous videos, that what I've learned to become over this period since I first started in 2005 with the initial concept was to learn to be a creative director. You know, I learned during that time what that meant. And what that meant was that the ideas don't have to always originate from me. I don't have to be the source of the ideas. Sometimes there's fans who come up with things. We have some fans who came up with like so Hugo has this kind of like chummy nickname for Marco that we introduce in this next book that is meant to be kind of like a tease, but also like to tease him, to bother him, but it's also something between them. He calls him Marco Roni, right? And which is like this cheesy nickname that he calls him that's like infantile and stupid, but you know, it's something that makes sense. And that came from the community, right? Someone, I think it was Boofy or someone had mentioned that in one of the comments. It's like, I love that. That actually is so corny that it works for this purpose. And so whether it was writers that I hired to come on with me to help me develop more material, or artists who I've you know, brought on, because being the artist too, I don't have to be the artist who does everything. I've brought on many artists. I've hired many artists to help develop the look and feel of the universe. And right now, for example, as our little studio starts to grow, we have our own concept artist, Nix, who does this just beautiful artwork for the RPG. I love bringing all the talents together. I love when people feel invested and they want to contribute to grow something, right? This is not an ego vehicle for me. This is something that I'm very passionate about, building a fictional universe that is thoughtful and that has a soul to it, right? And I think others sense that too, that there's a soul to this, especially in the world that we are in now, where everything is push button AI content, stuff that's like literally created with people who put their, you know, blood, sweat, and tears into something. I think is something that people respond to.
Yeah, I mean, the world, we keep saying it's a world, and it's true. It is a full world. You know, it's a world that needs towns and cities and people, and a lot of that comes from us, and a lot of that comes from the fans too. And we're proud of it, and they're proud of it. I think pretty much equally. So,
absolutely. Anyways, well, Ella, thank you for letting me, for giving me the space to talk about this and to let me go on and on. I hope you guys can see that, you can sense my passion about this. There's a lot of history to this, being, you know, many years of development leading to this point. And I'm genuinely very, very passionate and very excited. And sometimes I talk too much about it, but I hope that you can see that there is an incredible amount of depth. But I want to invite you to, if you haven't, first of all, thank you for watching the video. I hope you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you can see the updates. We do new videos all the time. We have live streams at least twice a week, and you'll get the notifications. I also want to invite you to join our Discord server at the Flux Destiny fandom, where we have this amazing community of fans who have gotten together over this common Flux Destiny cause. But in the process, not only do you get to talk to our lore leaders and the head of our RPG, Ella here, who can talk to you through, and me, and you know, we all talk about the lore in there, but you can make friends, talk about anime, video games, you know, pop culture. It's just a really cool community. So I want to invite you to join us at fluxfandom.com. It'll take you right there. And finally, I want to bring up our RPG that Ella and I have been working incredibly hard on, and it's in beta phase right now. And if you go to fluxfantasy.com, you can sign up there for updates and get the character sheet and the character creator guide, plus a whole bunch of other resources for free. There's no strings attached. All you have to do is sign up for the notifications, and you'll get it in your email. And it's this really amazing RPG that we are so proud of and we're so excited about. And people have been creating OCs like crazy, and we'll do another video about that another time. But I hope you go join us there. But until then, thank you again, Ella, and thank you guys for watching. And we'll see you in the fandom. Take care. And I decided no, what I needed to do was to focus on building. Uh, oh, oh, oh! I looked over and the cat, her cat Oscar likes to come visit sometimes. It is totally
I'm
fine.
back. I'm
He
sorry.
was clearly interested in what I was saying. It's totally fine. He can join us
Every
next
time you
time.
start talking, he always like he's just dead asleep somewhere, and then he's like, "Actually, I hear Chris. I better jump in there." I don't know
Why do I
why.
have that? I just have this effect on people. I just don't know why.
And
It's my,
animals apparently, because
yeah,
every time we
apparently.
get in the movie, all of your animals are like, "We need you right now."
um, well,
Well,
I'm
cool.
really glad this was a, Ella, thank you so much for the, Julia, we can see you, babe. Yes.
I was like, "Who's that sneaking in over there?"
Why don't you say hi? Go ahead. Go ahead, say hi.
Bye. Don't worry, I will cut all of this out.
Okay. No, leave it. Leave it in. Leave it in. We're gonna leave it so that you can remember next time. You're gonna leave all this in. No, no, I'm not on a thing. Okay, but seriously, this one, she's one of my biggest cheerleaders. I mean, she just is always. You are my sweetheart. You are my biggest cheerleader. What am I do without you? Huh? What am I do without you? I saw her coming in. I go, she's gonna get in the shot. I was like, here it goes. Here it goes. And then she's sneaking. It was actually really cute. We're leaving that
We've
in.
had 2 visitors in this one.
Yeah, we had the cat and now you.
Sorry.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Bye.